So here are a couple of drawings that I made at the Portrait Gallery, which is going to be our venue on Monday, our location. And I've demonstrated in the coming video two different approaches in an attempt to create different sorts of drawings, which might ultimately in the studio lead to different sorts of paintings. So the one on the left is more or less a charcoal rub-away drawing, but with an added element of some black pastel, allowing me to increase the contrast, get some darker and lighter contrast within the drawing. But that one I did in the Great Hall, which is a very dramatically lit space. There's light coming in through the windows, there are pillars, and some of these spotlit marble busts. So I hope you can make out what the subject is. You could look with your eyes half closed, but certainly I hope you'll see a degree of atmosphere in that drawing. Monochrome and very much tonal. So that might lead to a painting with similar features, and it might also include some figures. The one on the right I did on the top floor in the Alan Ramsey room, and this time I worked with colour. There's plenty of colour in some of these upstairs galleries, blue, green, yellow walls, and arched pillars and the like. And so again, in this following video, I'll be demonstrating how I started that drawing with colour shapes. And as I say, looking for a different sort of atmosphere, one that involves more colour and perhaps a certain clarity. In the Great Hall, a wonderful room with some light and dark spaces. I've chosen a viewpoint behind a pillar looking into one of the windows with a marble bust on shelf in front of the window. And I began with a traditional charcoal rub-away drawing. I've covered my white page. It doesn't look particularly white in the video, but it's a white sheet of paper which I covered with willow charcoal using the side of a thick stick. And I've then gradually from that grey mid-tone built up some darker areas. The dark pillar in front of me, which is kind of a frame or a way into the image, and then looking with my eyes half closed, trying to find some of the other dark shapes in the window and within the sculpture. And then having darkened those areas, I then take my rubber and I start to lift out light. So again, looking with my eyes half closed, that's where I can see a simplified pattern of light and shade. Now this is all quite small scale, so I'm obliged to simplify, and that really is a good thing with the aim that I have with this particular drawing, which is not to have too much definition, because as things become more definite, they tend to lose that atmosphere. So I'm after an atmosphere, a strong contrast of light and shade, but perhaps less definition. But what I'm doing that's different this time, having worked with the willow charcoal, which is very easy to lift off, very easy to soften and smudge, but not that easy to make very dark. This time I'm adding a little bit of black pastel. So I'm doing that now towards the end. Some of the very darkest places on the pillar, one or two places around the sculpture, I've added and smudged and worked in a little bit of black pastel so that that contrast from the light in the window and on the sculpture all the way through to these dark points is as strong as possible. The second drawing, this time I'm after, as I've said, a different kind of effect. I've gone upstairs to the Alan Ramsey room, and this is where there's plenty of colour, plenty of light. We've got these columns and arched pillars and then very colourful walls. This room is blue, but next door it's green, and there's also the yellow room that you can see through the doorway there. But again, not unlike the rub away charcoal process, this is a kind of rub away pastel process. On the white paper, I've first selected a few of my chalk pastels which fit the colour scheme of the room, and then using the side of the pastel, I'm really putting down some colour shapes. And again, not unlike the charcoal rub away drawing, this is a very quick way of working. I'm not painstakingly drawing out lines to get these pillars and the perspective of the room exactly right. That can come in time, but it'll come in some ways more easily if I first lay down some approximate shapes. Now I've observed the perspective. The pillar in the middle is bigger, wider, and there's a big space between that and the next one on the left, and that one on the left is a bit thinner, its base is a bit higher, and so on. So, I'm observing some of these basic principles of perspective, so that although I'm putting down simplified, colourful shapes, they are attempting to create the perspective and the three-dimensional space of the gallery, of the room. But as I say, this allows me to quickly put down colour. I can then start to mix these colours. I've smudged things so that I get some shadows on the floor. I can rub away if I want to lighten some of these colours, and I can spend longer and longer on refining the whole drawing. But that's very quickly creating a setting which is a nice contrast from the first drawing, which was very much tonal and more monochrome. So that's two approaches that we might try in two different spaces in the portrait gallery. There are my two drawings, and over the 3 weeks we're going to develop these settings with models in the studio.